There's a certain kind of man who makes a room slightly nervous. He's not the loudest. He's not aggressive. He doesn't perform. He just seems unbothered. Like the outcome of the conversation doesn't have a grip on him. And people misread him constantly. They call it confidence or charisma or some mysterious alpha thing you're supposed to buy a course to learn. It's none of that. What they're actually reacting to is much simpler and much harder to fake. He doesn't need anything from them. And when a person needs nothing from you, you have no leverage over him at all. This video is about where that actually comes from, not the posture, the structure underneath it. Because it's not a personality, it's a position, and you can build it. Let me tell you what this is, and, more importantly, what it isn't. I'm going to make one argument, that most of the power you have, or don't have, in a relationship isn't something you win with words. It's structural. It comes from how much you need the other side. And I'm going to back that with two ideas that have been sitting in sociology and negotiation research for decades, not with vibes. But first, the disclaimer, because this topic attracts the worst advice on the internet. This is not a video about playing it cool. It is not never text back, never show interest, act like you don't care so she chases you. That garbage is just neediness wearing a costume. You're still organizing your entire behavior around her reaction. You're just doing it in reverse. That's not independence. That's dependence with a smug face. Real independence isn't a performance you put on for one evening. It's a life you build over years. And the man who needs nothing isn't suppressing his needs. He met them somewhere else, on his own, so they're not for sale in this particular room. And one more thing, so we're honest. The research I'm about to cite notes that men, on average, tend to be the less invested partner. I'm not going to pretend that's a virtue. It's a statistical tendency, not a trophy. And the principle underneath it applies to every human being equally. This isn't a video about being a man. It's a video about not being available for leverage. So here's the first idea, and it's almost 100 years old. In 1938, a sociologist named Willard Waller wrote something he called the principle of least interest. It's this. In any relationship, the person who is less invested in keeping it has more power over it. Not the person who's smarter. Not the person who's richer or better looking or more articulate. The one who cares less about whether it continues. Sit with how uncomfortable that is, because it sounds cynical, and it isn't. It's just mechanical. The partner with more to lose will bend more to avoid losing it. The partner with less to lose can hold their position, because the thing they'd be walking away from doesn't frighten them. Researchers who followed up on Waller, Sprecher, Felmley, and others in the 2000s kept finding the same pattern. The less interested partner reports more control over the relationship and more say in the decisions. Now, I need you to hear the part that keeps this from being poison. Caring less is the wrong way to say it, and it's where every manipulator takes a wrong turn. They hear the one who cares less wins, and they try to manufacture not caring. They go cold on purpose. They withhold. They play games designed to look less invested than they are. And it never works for long, for one simple reason. It's fake, and fake needs maintenance. You're still completely invested. You're just spending enormous energy hiding it. You've made yourself more dependent, not less, because now your behavior is a full-time performance calibrated to her responses. The man who actually has this isn't caring less about her. He's caring less about the outcome because his life doesn't collapse either way. That's a completely different thing. One is a strategy, the other is a fact about your life. Let me make it concrete. Two men, same relationship, same argument. Man one has no savings, no close friends outside the relationship, no hobbies, no life that runs without her. If this ends, he loses his housing, his social world, his daily structure, and his only source of emotional regulation, all at once. Man 2 has money in the bank, 3 friends he'd take a bullet for, work that means something to him, and the ability to be alone without unraveling. Now put the exact same sentence in both their mouths. I'm not okay with how you spoke to me. In man 1's mouth, it's a plea dressed as a boundary, and everyone in the room can feel it, including him. In man 2's mouth, it's just a fact, and everyone can feel that too. Same words, completely different weight. And the difference isn't confidence. It's the bank balance, the friends, the work, and the regulations sitting behind the words. That's what people are picking up when a man seems unbothered. They're not reading his personality, they're reading his exits. And this is the thing the pickup artist industry will never tell you, because you can't sell it as a weekend seminar. You cannot fake having exits. You can fake the face. You cannot fake the 4 a.m. reality of whether your life works without this person. Everyone can eventually feel the difference between a man who's decided not to care and a man who genuinely has somewhere else to stand. So the first law is, power follows need, in reverse. The less your survival is wired into one person, the less that person can move you. Which raises the obvious question, where does somewhere else to stand actually come from? And for that, we leave sociology and go to negotiation. In 1981, 2 Harvard researchers, Roger Fisher and William Ury, wrote the most important book on negotiation ever published, Getting to Yes. And they gave the world one acronym that, once you see it, you see everywhere. BATNA. Best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Here's what it means. Your power in any negotiation does not come from how badly you want the deal. It comes from how good your options are if the deal falls through. Your BATNA is what you'll do instead if you walk away. And the better your instead, the more power you have at the table, automatically, without saying a word. 2 things about it matter enormously. First, your BATNA is yours. It doesn't require the other side's cooperation. It's the one source of leverage they can't touch because it lives entirely outside the deal. Second, you increase your power not by arguing harder, but by improving your alternative. A better outside option makes you calmer, clearer, and completely willing to walk, and the other side feels that shift before you open your mouth. Now overlay that on a relationship, and the whole thing snaps into focus. The man who needs nothing is just a man with an excellent BATNA. His best alternative to this relationship, being alone and being genuinely fine, is strong. So he never has to threaten to leave. He doesn't perform walking away. The credible alternative is the power. It's radiating off him whether he mentions it or not. And the desperate man? His BATNA is catastrophe. His best alternative to the relationship is an empty apartment, no friends, financial fear, and nights he can't regulate. So he can't hold any position. He folds on everything, not because he's weak, but because his alternative is genuinely terrible. And some part of him is doing that math in real time during every disagreement. This is why just have boundaries is useless advice on its own. A boundary is only real if you can enforce it, and you can only enforce it if you can survive the other person saying no. A boundary without a BATNA is a bluff, and people can smell a bluff. So stop trying to sound like you'd be fine without them. Go actually build the life where you would be. That's not a mindset, it's infrastructure. Which brings me to the part nobody sells, because it's slow. Before I give you the build, I have to show you the stakes, the dark version of everything I just said. Because independence isn't just about winning arguments. It's about what happens when the other person isn't playing fair. Look at how coercive control actually works. Not the movie version, the documented pattern. Researchers describe it as a system whose entire purpose is to manufacture dependence. It isolates you from your friends. It takes over the money. It regulates your daily life until, slowly, You have no independent footing left. The goal is a person who can't leave, not because they're chained, but because every exit has been quietly removed. Read that backwards, and you understand the whole game. Dependence isn't just a weakness, it's the target. It's the thing manipulators actively cultivate, because a dependent person is a controllable person. Your needs are the handles. That's what someone reaches for when they want to move you against your will. The friend group they can turn you against, the money you can't walk away from, the approval you're starving for. So the man who needs nothing isn't feared because he's dangerous. He's feared, and I'd rather say unmanageable, by anyone who runs on leverage, because he has no handles. There's nothing to grab. You can't isolate a man who has his own people. You can't financially trap a man who has his own money. You can't destabilize a man who can regulate himself. He removed the surface you'd normally attack. That's not dominance. It's just the absence of grip. And here's the quiet, important truth underneath it. The same independence that makes you impossible to control also makes you safe to love. Because a man with no exits is a frightened man, and frightened men are controlling too. The neediness runs both directions. Okay, so how do you actually build it? 4 exits. None of them are glamorous. Exit 1. Money. Not wealth. A floor. Enough savings and enough earning ability that leaving a bad situation is a hard decision, not an impossible one. This is your financial BATNA, and it is the single most important one, because so much control operates through money. The number you're aiming for isn't rich, it's, I could walk and I'd be okay. Exit 2. People. Friendships that exist independently of your relationship. I did a whole video on the male loneliness epidemic, and here's where it bites. A man whose entire social world runs through his partner has handed her a switch she can flip. Not because she's evil, because you built your life with a single point of failure. Real friends, plural, who are yours, are not a nice to have. They're structural. They're the difference between I'm leaving, meaning something, and meaning nothing. Exit 3. Purpose. Something that fills your life that has nothing to do with a relationship. Work that matters to you, a craft, a mission, a thing you'd get up for even if you were completely alone. A man whose entire meaning is downstream of one person will accept anything to keep that person. Because losing them isn't losing a partner, it's losing the point of his life. Don't make one human being the meaning of your existence. It's too much weight for any relationship to carry, and it quietly turns love into hostage-taking. Exit 4. Regulation. The ability to be alone with yourself without falling apart. To sit in a hard feeling without needing someone else to fix it right now. This is the one nobody talks about, and it's the deepest. Because if you need another person to regulate your nervous system, you are dependent in a way money can't solve. The research calls the vulnerable pattern anxious attachment, needing constant reassurance, terrified of abandonment. And it's exactly the pattern that keeps people in controlling relationships, hoping to earn an approval that never comes. Money, people, purpose, regulation. Those are the 4 exits. Notice what they all have in common. Not one of them is about the other person. Not one is a line you deliver. They're all things you build in your own life, on your own time, mostly in private, mostly boring. And here's what happens when you have them. You stop needing the relationship to go a particular way. Not because you care less about the person, you might love them more, but because your life doesn't hang on the outcome. And that, precisely that, is the thing everyone was misreading as charisma. It was never charisma. It was exits. Now, I have to tell you the part that breaks the whole red pill version of this. Because if you stop here, you'll get the lesson exactly backwards. You'd think a man who needs nothing would be a worse partner, colder, more detached, halfway out the door. The internet certainly sells it that way. Needing nothing gets packaged as not caring, keeping one foot out, never fully committing so you keep the upper hand. It's the opposite. And this is the most important thing I'll say. The man who has his 4 exits is the safest person in the room to actually love. Here's why. Everything he gives you by choice, not because he's starving, not because he has nowhere else to go, not because he'd drown without you. When a man with no exits says, "I love you," there's a plea buried in it. Please don't leave. I can't survive it. When a man with exits says it, it's clean. It means, I have looked at a life without you. I know I'd be fine, and I'm choosing you anyway. One of those is love. The other is a hostage negotiation wearing love's clothes. Neediness doesn't make you more loving. It makes you more controlling. Because a man terrified of losing someone will monitor them, guilt them, squeeze them, all in the name of love. The desperation you feel as devotion lands on the other person as pressure. The independent man doesn't do that, not because he's disciplined, but because he isn't afraid. He's not gripping, because he's not drowning. So the power this whole video is about was never power over anyone. That's the red pill misreading, and it's a trap of its own. It just turns you into the manipulator instead of the manipulated. The real thing is quieter. It's the power to be in a relationship without being captured by it. The power to say the true thing, hold the honest line, and love someone with open hands instead of a clenched fist. And yes, as a side effect, it does make you harder to manipulate, harder to control, and mildly unnerving to the kind of person who is counting on your neediness. Let them be unnerved. That was never the goal. It's just exhaust. The goal is freedom. A man who needs nothing from the room isn't trying to dominate the room. He's just no longer available to be owned by it. And the beautiful, counterintuitive punchline is that this is also what finally lets him love well, with his whole chest and none of the fear. You don't build exits to leave. You build them so that when you stay, it actually means something. So if you take anything from this, take the build, not the attitude. 1. Stop performing independence and start constructing it. Every hour you'd spend learning to act unbothered, spend on the 4 exits instead. The savings account, the friendships, the work that matters, the ability to sit with yourself. The posture is worthless. The infrastructure is everything. And it's the only version that can't be faked at 4 in the morning. 2. Measure your power by your alternatives, not your arguments. Before your next hard conversation, ask the honest question. What's my actual BATNA here? What happens to my life if this doesn't go my way? If the answer is catastrophe, that's not a communication problem you can fix with better words. That's a life you haven't built yet. Go build it. 3. And this is the one that matters most. Do it so you can love without fear, not so you can win. The moment needing nothing becomes a way to dominate someone, you've just switched seats with the manipulator. Build the exits so your yes is real and your stay is a choice. That's the difference between a free man and a cold one. And from the outside, they can look identical for a while, but only one of them can actually be loved. I spent years thinking power was something you projected. It isn't. It's something you build quietly in your own life until one day you notice you're no longer afraid of losing things, and people feel it before you say a word. So let me ask you, honestly, of your 4 exits, money, people, purpose, regulation, which one have you actually built, and which one have you been avoiding? Tell me below. I read them.